A Sona should never sell because it was sold on Sona. Like a Sona should sell because an artist connected with a mega fan or a believer or a supporter, and it's a one-to-one relationship there. So the way I'm thinking about how we proliferate like Sona auctions is how do we equip artists with the best tools to reach their communities, right? To activate around their auctions, to activate around the vision of why they're coming to Sona, why they're selling on Sona.
Episode 39 of Invest in Music with Laura from Sona. Today we're here to talk about the launch of their new platform, her background as a musician and a product designer, and building a product in the bottom of the bear market. As a reminder, you can collect this episode on investinmusic.xyz. I want to give a big shout out to our collectors from last week, 0x Lucas, I am Nick, and Melissa Zhang. Wouldn't be able to do it without you guys. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. Episode 39 of Invest in Music with Laura from Sona. We are back. We got Laura in the building, fresh off the launch of Sona. Laura, how are we feeling today?
We're feeling great. We're feeling good. Thanks for having me.
Of course. I'm really glad that you're here. It's been an amazing journey watching you come into Sona and all the stuff that you've been building. You know, we first met through FWB a couple years ago, but I would love for you to give a quick background on yourself and tell us about who you are and then a little bit more about Sona.
Totally. So I guess there's kind of two sides to my background. You've got like product and protocol designer background, Laura, and then you've got like high school kid who was like a songwriter musician in Puerto Rico background, Laura, who had to give up on her dreams background, Laura. But from the crypto side, right, I started at Upshot back in 2019, 2020. I was their head of product design, and their whole vision, right, was to, be the intersection of DeFi and NFTs, which is like an interesting mindset to be in from the get-go. And that was right before, NFTs had their meteoric rise. So from the beginning, I was in this position, sort of had a bird's eye view of what was going on, joined Friends with Benefits DAO, became a very active community contributor, sort of created their hackathon, was on the product team, like was really, really bought into this idea of like community-driven value, and was also watching a lot of folks from culture coming into crypto, which sets the stage for why Sona. But on the, the music side, right, I was a musician. I was a kid who, wrote songs for catharsis. It was a lot of like music for healing. And when I was 16, I was offered a record label deal and they wanted me to drop out of high school, move to LA, become this like Latin pop star, which was the opposite of who I was. And I therefore hard pivoted into product design and design. But my mom's still a musician, and she's a musician and an activist. And ultimately, right, all of these pieces come together to create a version of the music industry where someone like me as a kid could have made it and someone like my mom could survive on her music today. So that's a little bit about me.
There's a lot that I want to unpack there. I guess the first question that comes to mind is getting offered a record deal at 16, and you mentioned that you wanted to hard pivot away from that. Like, what was the feelings that you had at the time about moving to Los Angeles, being a full-time artist versus these ambitions you had of doing stuff in sort of the tech world?
Yeah. So, I mean, at the time I was very much sort of like on this wavering line between fine art and music. Like I consider myself an artist first and foremost. And both of those practices were like really sacred to me. Like my music was like a source of healing, a source of catharsis. And at that time when I was offered the record deal, I basically saw like my most important form of art being packaged for commercial use. Like they saw what they could sell versus what I wanted to create. I was like old enough to read between the lines and see that I would never own any of the music I ever made. I'd never be able to decide the type of music I wanted to make. And as a 16-year-old, I was like, they're literally just saying we can sell your body and we want you to move out here and be the next Shakira. So I decided if I wanted to keep music my art, I would never be able to do it commercially, and I wasn't making the type of music that could be a brand. So I decided to commercialize my other art, which was fine art, which is why I became a designer, which is the big joke is like, right, when you commercialize fine art, it becomes design.
Mm-hmm. Makes a lot of sense. And did you know that you wanted to pursue a career in tech, or did that just kind of become the vehicle in which you're able to use your design passion to bring it to the world?
Totally. So that's an interesting story too, because I initially studied furniture design and gender studies and urban studies. And when I was like in the wood shop or in the metal shop, like I physically, my body could not work with some of the tools. Like I wasn't heavy enough or I wasn't strong enough. And I was so in love with this idea of like creating in 3-dimensional space. So I actually turned to digital product design as a space to find something that was like not limited by my body, right? Like a space where like if I could dream it, I could build it. And I'm actually a self-taught product designer. And I remember when I was I was a senior in college and I was applying for an internship at Google, I was like, I want to show I can do this. And I actually got a message back from them saying that they could not accept my application because none of my coursework material showed that I would have the skill set to have created the submission that I made. And they thought that I had someone else do it. And that was heartbreaking for me. I was like, you mean you're telling me that I'm a really well self-taught product designer, and that's why you can't take me in because you can't imagine someone like me could do this. So yeah, honestly, building in tech was just a way to finally be able to build without limits, right? Build without boundaries. And it also felt like a way to make all of this have tangible value for people. It's like you're building systems, you're building worlds.
What was the progression then from applying to Google, receiving that message back, to then finding a lane for yourself to keep working in tech and sort of exploring that niche of yours?
Totally. So when I graduated, I started doing a lot of sort of like freelance product design and freelance graphic design for little tech startups, some furniture startups. And at one point in the pandemic, I completely rebranded myself as I am a product designer. Like I'm gonna ask the world for what I want to do. And someone that I TA'd at RISD, her name's Pooja Nitrikar, she was the creative director for Upshot at the time. And she just happened to be looking for a product designer while I was in that rebrand. This was pre-NFTs blowing up, right? She asked me if I would want to come onto the team. And I had actually had exposure to like blockchain back in, like 2013. 2012, 2013, like my friends were mining Bitcoin through video games. I did some like design work for a company called BitBuddy. So I knew what it was. I was really sold into the vision. And she's like, we're doing this thing that's like blockchain and images. And I was like, say less. I love the space. Get me in there. and that's honestly like the first time I had healthcare. I had like a proper salary. And I'm so grateful that, someone that I taught ended up thinking of me and coming back and changing my life.
It's a really amazing way to be able to spend your time in the space because, like you said, you had that security of knowing that there was a paycheck coming in, that you were able to work on something that you were passionate about. And I'm curious to hear, you mentioned from Upshot, you got really involved in the FWB community. What did that transition look like of you going from here's a job that pays me a salary to be involved in the space to I want to be a really active contributor to this community as a whole?
Totally. So I think basically the way that happened was that from the get-go, right, the technology is a community technology. It's something that links everything that's being built on top of it. And I'm so obsessed with that feature of the technology and obsessed with incentive design, right? And when I was working at Upshot and had this sort of bird's eye view of different people building in the space and these different communities bubbling up in the space, Friends with Benefits or FWB was like the first of its kind in bringing people together on a shared ethos and on a shared care for culture and community. And I was like, this is going to be the hotbed for innovation in the space, because what people don't realize they've built is technology for community. And this is the first shot in the dark at what that could look like. And I was the most excited about, teaching people how to work with each other and teaching people how to be inspired by each other, which is why I, dreamt up the hackathon. I was like, we have so much talent in here, and we're really only going to see value for the community if we can harness that talent and teach that talent how to create as an organism. So I think I honestly am just the type of person that gets excited about building and helping other people build. And in that time, seeing all these companies pop out of the hackathons, seeing artists wanting to work with FWB, seeing how it was this living organism. And I felt like I was one of the beating hearts of it. Right. And ultimately I wanted to help further that vision somewhere else. And I think a lot of the work I did at FWB gave me the confidence and the community, right, to make me feel like I could.
And I think that's so important because one thing I really respect about you is that when you got into the community, you didn't only become a part of it, right? You actually figured out how to take initiative to contribute to it in a way that you felt was very meaningful to yourself. And I feel like it's something that's very hard to teach within working in crypto broadly, is this idea of, you know, governance and being able to make yourself a value-added contributor and how to bring table ideas to the table and then execute on them. And, you know, something like running a hackathon is by no means an easy feat. There's so much coordination, there's capital involved, there's partnerships involved, there's, you know, project management and developer management and whatnot. And so, yeah, I think it was a very natural progression for you to be running something like that based on what we just talked about. But I do just want to say that having that initiative to be like, I have this idea for this community and I want to be the one that is overseeing it. Like, it feels like it was a very big, you know, leap of confidence. And I'm really glad that you felt confident enough to do that, because it ended up resulting in, you know, what I'm assuming did eventually end up leading to you wanting to make Sona and kind of what we're here to talk about today.
Okay. Yes. Incredible. Okay. So the main piece with why the hackathon sort of like led to me wanting to start something or start Sona is ultimately, right, my feeling, and continues to be my feeling about FWB, DAOs, protocols, is you need to build something that can exist with or without you and help the people that you built it for with or without you. And what the hackathon was supposed to be was like an infrastructure for a community to harness and leverage to create beautiful things from this community, to create value for this community. And that whether I was there or wasn't there, right, the point was that it should be able to continue, right? But ultimately, I couldn't fold it in to the DAO in the way that it needed to have wings and to have legs and to continue without my participation. So Sona ultimately, right, was I saw a lot of people hacking on music in particular. I saw a lot of artists coming in, teaming up with engineers, and I also was not seeing that much that was sustainable or that spoke to the music industry itself, right? There were a lot of really cool ideas coming in for new music and new IP and new artists, but unfortunately, we live in a world where a lot of artists today, right, are bound by the industry that they work in. So my goal with Sona was to create something that could call those artists in so that they could take advantage of everything that was being built here and build an infrastructure that, whether or not Sona exists today or tomorrow, could continue to create value for every artist that participates, that could be like, you know, basically leverage the beauty of crypto, which is baked in incentive design and incentive mechanisms to finally create a creator economy or creative economy that could benefit the artist. So it really was just, I wanted to build something like that at FWB that was broader, and seeing how much interest and how much support and how much, you know, music was coming in, I was like, okay, I want to do my part in creating something that any musician can use. And the parameters I set was like, my mom needs to be able to use this thing. Like, she is an activist and a musician who doesn't make any money off her music. She's not a brand, right? She's not like a Blau that could come in and sell out. She's someone that would need a paycheck coming in every 2 weeks, and someone that needs those 100 or 1,000 true fans to support her work. When I found out that Toki, right, also felt that this model could really support her and really support her label, and she was like, woman, you got to build this. You got to come out and make this. It's like, okay, like if it works for every artist on every end of the spectrum, like, this has got to exist. So again, kind of a community piece. It's like, they had to build something that uniquely, from my perspective, could help and leave a mark.
And I want to go deeper into that. But before we go into sort of the vision and what you guys launched this week, I'd love to hear more about the story with you and Jen Toki Monsta as co-founders. Yes. How did that come about? And just what was that relationship like?
Oh my God, for sure. So famously, Jen is the first person or friend that I ever made on a plane. So we were both flying to Art Basel 3 years ago, so which is why we always come back to Basel. It's kind of like our inception moment. But we were both on a flight going to Basel, and there was this older couple, Jerry and Fern, sitting next to her, trying to figure out like which parties everyone was going to. And I was sitting in front of Jen. So she, sitting behind me, saw that I was finalizing the guest list for the FWB party. And she goes, oh, I think that girl has a party. And I'm very like, oh, what? and Jerry and Fern trying to figure out how to get on the guest list for FWB, and I'm trying to figure out how to get them a wallet so I can airdrop them tokens. And in all of this, she starts, posting on Twitter that she's on a flight and getting Jerry and Fern on the guest list for FWB. And then Trevor Mufadri's founder of FWB, figures out that we're both on the same plane. And he's like, you two need to be friends. You two need to hang out. So Jen and I were like, okay, I trust Trevor, you trust Trevor. We kept bumping into each other at like various Web3 events, conferences, etc. We would often sort of like be sitting in the corner of a room looking out and commenting on how crazy everything was. And one day I tweeted like, imagine music NFTs without selling your rights and royalties or coming up with endless perks and benefits for your collectors. And she texts me and she's like, Laura, what's this? Tell me more. Come on. So we got on a call and I told her the idea. I was like, hey, I'm working on this thing for my mom that I think, could potentially help a lot of people. And she's like, holy smokes, this is the first thing I've seen that could help me and it could help my artists. How do I help you do this? Like, you got to do this. And it's like, well, I'm a team of one. So now we can be a team of two. You can be a co-founder. And then she hopped on and she's like been the most incredible, like big sister energy vibe to work with and build this with.
It's amazing to see the value that an artist can bring to the table too, because I think that they've just felt this problem so real, over the course of their lives and having been in the industry for so long. It's very refreshing to have the perspective of someone that's been in the trenches, but also has had success in those trenches. Because I think what you alluded to earlier is that a lot of the times when it comes to building new products, it's almost like people are building to find a solution to a problem they were never able to solve themselves. Like if you just never found a market for your music, if you never found success to be able to monetize on it and whatnot, I think a lot of the solutions that we see with crypto music products today are like, okay, with all due respect, like I was never really able to figure out how to make it work in the industry, traditionally speaking. So we're going to build a new paradigm. And I think that there's a lot of merit to that. And I think there's a lot of power in that intention. But I think something that feels rooted in the core of Sona is saying, hey, we are a team that has had the opportunity to really learn what the music industry is like from the inside out. Jen being an artist that streams very well, that plays a lot of shows, is, making a living on the back of music much more than a lot of people who try to do it. I feel like that DNA helps to inform the product and the protocol in a way that's very different from a lot of the ways that a lot of other products in the space have gone about doing it.
Totally. If anything, having a successful musician on the team, right, gave us this like insider view to what's actually going on. Someone like Jen, even though she's maybe the most famous Asian American producer, right, she still needs to tour to survive. And she can't live off of her streaming, even though she's a very well-streamed artist. And part of that, right, informs, okay, where the issues really are. And her also as an independent label owner, really understanding the issues that her smaller artists who are coming up against a lot of the issues that Web3 artists face today are experiencing. It's just invaluable insight into what problems actually need solving now and what problems are uniquely solved by the tools and resources that Web3 offers or that crypto offers, right? So that, totally invaluable.
So let's go into the vision for Sona, because I want you to give kind of like the 1,000-foot view of what you guys are building first. And then I want to zoom in a little bit more and talk about this auction that you guys just did with Toki Monster, the first one that was on the platform. So let's start from a really high level. Like, what was the vision for Sona when you guys set out to build it? And then how did that actually manifest into this first auction that came out last week?
Totally. So the sort of the super bird's eye view, 1,000-foot view vision for Sona is I felt that by charging people to stream, right, charging discovery, which was actually limiting discovery, right? I felt like $11 a month is not sustainable or scalable, especially as we're thinking of emerging economies or people that are outside of the West, right? I mean, we're also seeing huge issues with how that was influencing what gets streamed and what gets played and what gets discovered. So the first idea for Sona was, what if instead of charging everyone who listens to music for what sustains, right, the payout for the enjoyment of music, is we actually create a new paradigm where we find a new way to measure the tangible value of music. And what if the measurable, tangible value of music was how much someone loved music, how much someone was like willing to go out of their way to support a musician, how much someone is willing to pay to participate in the success of a song that they really love, and blowing up this conception of like a catalog acquisition market, right? So what if instead of charging the people that should be listening for free, charging the people that want to support an artist further, want to support a song further, be a part of that success, take a little bit off the top of that and have that redistributed to every artist in this ecosystem and all the people that help every artist in this ecosystem. And the way that that works, right, is like artists mint their music on Sona. Now it's a Sona. They can own it and earn, or they can sell it and share those earnings with a fan or a collector. And all the transaction fees on anything that touches Sona are pooled, and every 2 weeks we send it out proportional to how much it's played. So right, that first iteration is just Sonas are selling, people are supporting artists, people are betting on songs they believe in. We take, 5% of all of that, pool it in one enormous pool under the protocol, and then every 2 weeks it's like, cool. That's what gets sent out, so that streaming is ultimately free, and people are incentivized to get people to listen to the music they're collecting, so that fans are incentivized with no barrier to entry to come listen to the artists that they love, and so that like artists ultimately, right, have these two new revenue streams, right? They have this recurring revenue coming every 2 weeks, sort of based on all the value coming into this protocol. And then you also have that direct revenue coming from your 1,000 true fans or people that want to support you in your career.
Nice. And so to kind of go into this first auction that happened, help me better understand, as someone that's new to Sona from a patronage perspective, someone who wants to sort of support Toki and this amazing story that she told with her first Sona release, versus someone that just wants to come in, listen to music, they don't even know about this auction, etc. Like, take me through those different archetypes.
Totally. So the way that Sona is built is that it's essentially just a free music streaming platform where your streams push rewards in the direction of the artist that you're listening to. So as a listener, right, no barrier to entry, no cost. You just know that when you're there, your streams are counting towards artists that you love being paid. Now, let's say that you're a collector type or a fan, and you saw that Jen was posting about her new release, or you encounter it right on the song page that something is up for auction. The happy trail there is that you walk in there and essentially the artist tells background and story on the song. They give context for why this is important. Every first sale is an auction. There's, after the first bid is placed, there's like a 24-hour window where anyone can bid and participate. But ultimately, right, the person who purchases this Sona or purchases the song in perpetuity until they sell the song will be earning 70% of the rewards generated on Sona for that song. So you're essentially becoming like a protocol level label, while an artist gets to keep their master rights, all of their traditional revenues. This creates a parallel revenue stream that they can share with their biggest supporters, which again is an important piece of Sona, is that the protocol itself is rewarding people's patronage, is rewarding people supporting artists, as opposed to artists having to constantly come up with new ways to thank their biggest supporters. And it also gives an artist data on who those supporters are and who those higher paying fans are, and collects them all in this community of people that are all incentivized to help this artist blow up, right? So nice. It's great because it's kind of like there's something in it for everyone, and everyone benefits proportional to the value that they're bringing to the ecosystem.
And something I found really amazing about the way you guys launched is that you mentioned it's a free streaming platform. And so the question then becomes, what music can I stream? And, historically, what we've seen with crypto platforms is that emerging artists who are very into technology will be sort of the early adopters. We end up seeing this bottleneck of there not being a lot of catalog available because there's not that many people willing to jump through the hoops. Can you talk a little bit more about the strategy you guys took to getting music on Sona that people can listen to?
Totally. So from the get-go, because we knew we wanted to make this a streaming platform, we needed to be super airtight on licensing. So instead of going direct to artist or direct to small label, right, who would have to go through the loops of figuring out their distribution to even have their music legally streamable anywhere that's not a DSP, we decided to just go the traditional DSP route, and digital service provider being like a Spotify or an Apple Music, and design our commercial model to slot into those same holes so that we could work directly with people that, are basically collecting all the metadata from labels and independent artists and sending it to Apple Music, sending it to Spotify. Now they also send it to Sona. So all that metadata is already there. All the legal is taken care of. So an artist knows that if they see their music streamable, they can just claim their account and activate their music on Sona and start earning those rewards. And all of their rights holders are already cut into the equation, because I think a lot of the slowness and growth that we've seen, right, is that by going artist to artist or label to label, it's these one-off deals, right? One-off arrangements to have an artist participating in quote unquote Web3 experiments. But by creating a model that is built in the same language as a streaming service or as a music streaming service, you end up creating something that scales infinitely and protects every artist that participates, protects their revenue, and is also protecting the rewards that are being sent out to collectors that support them.
And you mentioned an artist activating their account. I know that you guys worked with Privy on your onboarding flow to make it very easy for anyone to create a wallet. Can you talk more about why you guys decided to use that for onboarding and what the benefit is to an artist or someone who's completely new to crypto?
Totally. I mean, the point is that we market ourselves as a music tech company, and we're just using the best tech we can for the vision that we want to see in the world. And right now that is blockchain technology, right? But ultimately, we didn't want people to feel like as a listener, they were being forced to interact with crypto, or as an artist that they were forcing their audiences to interact with technology that they don't understand. So it was imperative for us that the experience for a user would be an email login, you're going through the flow, you have no idea that there's Web3 on the back end or that there's crypto on the back end. And then even in an auction flow, like, right, this first one, we had it in ETH because it was a nod to our community. But ultimately, right, the auctions would be in USDC, would be in things that people understand. And all the rewards that are coming out are in USDC. So we're also not sort of pegging the reward pool to like anything unstable. And it's something that people can rely on. And that's also super important for artists, is that things go direct to bank account, right? Like, not every artist in the world wants to be stashing ETH. They just want to pay their rent. So on both sides of the equation, just easy onboarding for fans and easy onboarding for fans and easy onboarding for fans.
It's definitely been a very catch-22 situation where a lot of artists that are selling their music as NFTs have made a lot of ETH on the back of that, but then you have this whole nightmare around like paying taxes. You have income that was priced, when ETH was one price, and then you sell your ETH at a different price and whatnot. And, there's obviously the case where an artist makes ETH and then ETH goes up a lot and you made more money than you started with. But I think what we saw most commonly in the last 2 years was that an artist would make more money than they've ever made in their lives. They would either not sell that ETH, or if they did, they would just cash it all out and spend it because they just made money. They just don't think about that. And then they have this huge tax dilemma where they have to understand, okay, now I owe how much to the government, and I have to sell this ETH to pay the government that's worth less than what I received it at. And, I feel like I just realized that there's a lot of friction. What I really like about what you just said is that I think a lot of the challenge here is really just making these products easy to use and understand, where there's not a huge barrier to be able to get paid in the first place and then use that money to pay rent and do very basic life things,
Exactly. I mean, the whole point of Sona is to be a super consistent paycheck that comes out every 2 weeks that an artist can rely on, and that needs to be stable. And it needs to be something that can go straight to bank account and help an artist focus on their music and not how they're going to make ends meet. So yeah, no, big +1.
I want to zoom out for a second, because as someone that's been building in the space for the last couple of years, you mentioned Upshot, you mentioned FWB, now you're working on Sona. Give me kind of the macro perspective that you have on sort of the crypto landscape as a whole. I want to go more into sort of like on-chain music and where you think that's at today. But before we do that, like, how are you feeling about just the general state of all the teams building in crypto right now and sort of the shared focus that we have as like an industry?
Right. I think we're in a bit of a flux point, and I think people are understanding the value of more of the crypto being on the back end. I used to say all the time that there was too much of the back end on the front end, and your average consumer does not understand the tools in front of them. So I think right now we are seeing like more trending towards consumer, less trend towards DeFi, more trend towards culture. Really loved that app that came out that was like restaurant points. Interesting when Friend Tech came out, right? They're all little attempts at like bridging the gap between things people might actually use and how we want them to use them. And I think in the coming months, we're going to start to see learnings from people are not using these things the way we want them to use them because we haven't found the right applications yet, right? So I'm really
Right.
excited to see where things are moving, and I'm very, very lucky to sort of be in touch with a bunch of people building and hacking on consumer crypto. I think there's a lot of exciting things to come that makes sense, right, to the average
Yeah.
person, not to all of us that have been here for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, right, to the person that's like, oh, somehow this just like works and feels better. And
Mm.
yeah, the decentralized social landscape, I think, is the thing I'm most excited about, is breaking down the barriers between consumer products that are being built in crypto and using that, right, as like this beautiful, rich source of knowledge of like who you are and seeing yourself imprinted everywhere in a way that feels familiar and doesn't feel bound to a platform. Because the more I'm in things like Farcaster, Webcaster, etc., and I'm hopping between that and Instagram or anything really, I can already feel the beginnings of the excitement around taking my personality with me instead of feeling like I have to plug in different versions of my personality to like somehow mirror what I've been building for years somewhere else. So
Mm.
very convoluted, but I think we're starting to see the beginnings of, yeah, just real consumer application
It's funny,
and
and
the
I'm sure that you
benefit.
can, yeah, I'm sure you can relate to this with your product design background, but it's just funny how much progress is really just making something feel basic and simple and actually not that severely different from like the products that you have today. I feel like in a lot of ways, crypto products sort of got an edge on being so different that like you had to download a wallet and then you had to sign in and then you have to pay with ETH and all this stuff. And now it seems like the progress that's being made is just kind of reaching parity with the platforms that we already know today. But as someone who's never used it, you're just like, okay, what makes this special if it just feels the exact same as what I've been using? But it is really fascinating just to observe and watch the struggles and the pain that comes from taking a new technology and making it so simple and straightforward that it actually feels one-to-one parity with the platforms that we're already used to.
Totally, because we all know, I think deep in our hearts, that the underlying infrastructure is going to make all of this so much more magical and so much more powerful. But we need to have parity with like the smoothness of operation now. We need people to have like joy when they're using these products, and then turning on the switch for like the why to use it here becomes so much easier. But
Mm.
that barrier, right, of like learning new actions, plugging in a wallet, it's just slowing our growth and development. So I'm glad that people are finally catching on to this like design thinking mentality around what crypto can be. Huge shout out to OX Designer for being a big part of that.
Yeah, I was getting him a shout out too. I feel like he's always just posting so many cool clips on Twitter about different features that in one way or another will exist in some way, shape, or form. But he's great. He's
Exactly.
fantastic. I also
The
want to kind
best.
of bring up a note about like parity within music as well, because I think an interesting position that you're in that I've definitely felt myself is being so deeply rooted in crypto. There's a very, clear school of thought. There's a very clear community around it. When you start to talk to music people, at least I've been feeling like you are literally in an entirely separate world, and everything that you know about crypto almost needs to take a back seat to what everyone knows about music. And I think that's kind of hard to describe from like a high level, but I'm just curious if you felt that way when you've been speaking at conferences. I know you went to things like ADE and whatnot. Like, how do you feel your time speaking to the music industry differs from the way that you are speaking to people in the crypto world?
Totally. So I've been speaking mostly to people in the music industry for the past year, I'd say. And the secret there has been, or the biggest learning there has been learning their language and translating, right, the solutions that we're building for in crypto to the problems that they're facing in the words that they use. So,
Mm.
right, we say like fast, transparent emission of payments. To them, we say we're solving payment lag.
Mm-hmm.
We're saying attribution and master rights, right? It's basically saying like, look, I understand exactly how your very convoluted black box industry works right now. And the solutions that I'm building, right, are plugging into that, but I'm not gonna try and make you understand it the way that I know it. I'm gonna learn how to translate my thoughts to how you know it. It's essentially instead of trying to get them to understand your ethos, it's finding what piques their interest, getting them at least interested enough to take a chance and do a pilot, and then you just prove it, right? You prove how
Mm.
it works, you make them see it. That's the only way you're gonna get them to actually adopt any of this technology. And I think a lot of it is like, we haven't even launched and we have like 5 distributor partners on board, many labels like excited to participate, and there are no numbers yet. This is just ideology. This is just vision. This is just them being exasperated with how things are now. And it's beautiful, right? The biggest issues in the music industry being payment lag, right? Intransparency, lack of attribution, things falling through the cracks, bureaucracy, are things that map one-to-one to the technology that we're building in. It's almost a joke that it's so overlapping. So I know it in my bones, right, that I think crypto can revolutionize the music industry, and I think they've been seeing it too. Like 10 years ago, they tried to put all of music rights on chain. Like they saw the Bitcoin white paper and they were like, yes, music rights. And it's just so hard to get people to do the work without dangling some sort of carrot. And I think right now what we're building in Web3, right, these new revenue streams, these new revenue sources, these new applications, is finally going to be the carrot that makes the industry do the work.
What's been the sentiment from distributors? When you're talking to distributors about onboarding their catalog, how are they feeling about the current state of the music industry more broadly?
Totally. So everyone right now is looking for alternative revenue streams. Like I think the news, Spotify, like they have yet to be profitable. The majors are looking for like different ways, different streaming platforms. Just everyone is thirsty for what comes next, because streaming is not the end all be all. And it's certainly reaching sort of like it's reaching a breaking point in how much value it can drive for artists and to labels. So at least from the distributor standpoint, they're extremely excited about trying out new things. But they need to do it, right, in a way that respects tradition, in a way that respects master rights holders, the rights holders they work with, because they're also in a tricky position, right, where it's their job to make their clients as much money as possible. And they want to make sure that they can, and they want to make sure that they're working with people that won't make them look bad when they're coming back to their clients. So it's a bit of a mixed bag, but there's mostly been immense excitement, immense like, yes, we need something new. And a lot of our distributor partners have they want to do like press releases. They want to do joint marketing campaigns. They want their people to know that there's something new out there that they believe in and that they trust. And I think that's really great signal for the rest of the community as well.
And as a founder who's rolling out this platform and this protocol, how do you think about your go-to-market strategy? Like, how do you think about the way that you're getting this brand out into the world? How do you think about the way that you're highlighting partnerships? Like, just take me through your thought process on how to make this a thing that everyone is aware of.
Totally. So I think first and foremost, I think of this in two different ways, in that a Sona should never sell because it was sold on Sona. Like a Sona should sell because an artist connected with a mega fan or a believer or a supporter, and it's a one-to-one relationship there. So the way I'm thinking about how we proliferate like Sona auctions is how do we equip artists with the best tools to reach their communities, right? To activate around their auctions, to activate around the vision of why they're coming to Sona, why they're selling on Sona. That's one piece. Because I think if we have a similar situation where, the only Sonas that are selling are ones that we're tweeting about, we haven't done our job well. It should be that an artist, goes on IG Live and says that they're finishing their auction, and those are the people bidding. But I think the way that our company can really support or like really make this work from the other side of this, which is the reward pool, right, is like activations that we can do with events partners, with brand partners, with, literally activating our community to tip the reward pool every time there's an auction. Just like find ways of making Sona's brand. If you're transacting with the brand, you're transacting with that reward pool. You're transacting with this vision for like a more equitable and rewarding industry for artists and the people that support them, and have our branding align around that. So it's like right now I'm in an era of brand partnerships. I'm in an era of like creative activations, and in an era of trying different things out with these first options to figure out the best toolkit I can give artists to market their work and see how best we can support them on that messaging.
Makes sense. And I'm curious to hear your journey as a founder as well, because I know it's been a very tough last couple of years to be building a product in crypto. I think you probably started building Sona at like the very start of the bear market, if I had to like take a wild guess here. How has it been trying to, lead a company and build a product over the course of the last 2 years?
Right. So I mean, from the builder side, it's a dream building in a bear market, right? Because there's less pressure to ship, there's less pressure to outperform or to ship something half baked. But on the flip side, right, it's been, I mean, we had been planning to do, we'd been planning a very different timeline. Let's put it that way. And the slowness to launch definitely coincided with the slowness of this market and the fear around this market and this fear around public perception. Like, it was very difficult to talk to artists and teams about crypto when the FTX trials are happening, right? It's like people did not want to associate with an industry that felt like a massive rug pull. So on the one hand, right, I'm so grateful that the team had the time to really build this right and build this well and build this with conviction. Um, but on the flip side, it was scary for a bit there because I'm like, what if we never get out of the storm? What if we can never have that opportunity to show what this tech was built for and not how bad actors have been leveraging against people, right?
Yeah.
But we got a great team. And it's honestly like I feel like I have the worst job in the company because I have to look outward. But every time I look inward and I'm looking at what's happening in Sona, in our Slack, in the team, like all the innovation that's happening, all the support that's happening, all the artists getting excited, it's like that's a wonderland in there. And I'm out here just like trying to get everyone to understand like what's so exciting about this, what's so powerful about this, and like trust and believe in my team as much as I do, more than anything.
Yeah. It was a really weird feeling going from NFTs being like the hottest thing ever that everyone wanted to talk about, everyone wanting to get like tips on how to do it, learning how to download a MetaMask, et cetera, to it just being like a huge turnoff, to the point where like if you even brought it up in conversation, you noticed that people would gloss over it, they would immediately lose interest. And I thought that the pace at which that switched was so fascinating because it went from people like really, really wanting to find time to talk about it to people wanting to have nothing to do with it. And I think as someone who's continually been passionate about this space for a long time, that reception going from so hot to so cold so fast was a very challenging feeling to deal with. I'm curious if you experienced that at all in like the early meetings you were having around Sona and just kind of how you dealt with that.
Oh, for sure. I mean, especially in the music industry, right? Like every music conference back in 2020, 2021, like the only thing they could talk about was like Web3 and NFTs and like how they were gonna, take control of the narrative. And when I started going to conferences, like it was the beginning of the end for NFTs and music, and it suddenly became this 4-letter word. And what we were so proud, the technology we were so proud to be building on was suddenly something that we had to hide in all of our marketing material and hide in all of our pitching, because ultimately it doesn't matter what technology you're building on. If it works, it works. And it's like, now the narrative, in music and I think in tech in general had like, massively swayed to AI. And it's upsetting to see that transition, knowing that one technology can massively benefit the creator and one technology has a very, very slippery slope to cutting the creator out of the equation. And I personally don't believe that that would ever happen. But I do know that a lot of the jobs that pay artists bills would be cut out of the equation. So it was, just a big kick in the gut. And I'm really happy to see a bit of a change in sentiment now. Like, it couldn't be better timing to be bringing Sona to the world, honestly.
I totally agree. I think I also feel a little bit mixed emotions about the change in sentiment relying so heavily on the price of different tokens, where it feels like there are really amazing things happening under the hood with the way consumer apps are being built, with infrastructure, decentralized social, all these things that we talked about. But if you zoom out from that, it feels like the reason that the sentiment is changing is because ETH's above 2K, because Solana is at $70. There's a meme coin that just pumped to $1 billion. And it's very interesting being someone who's passionate about bringing crypto to the regular person through the form of a product, finding the lane to fit into the conversation of people are making money off of trading degenerate shitcoins. And I'm just curious to hear like if you have any thoughts or reactions to balancing those two worlds.
Right. So again, this is like speaks to why Sona emits stablecoin, right? And anything hitting the artist and anything that is like the lifeblood needs to stay stable. But ultimately, right now, we are in a bit of a frothy era, or the beginning of a frothy era. And the best thing that I can do as a founder for the artists in our community, for Sona as a protocol, is be like, okay, you're going to take that froth and you're going to put it here, right? Because this money here is going to do something for the community, for the music industry, for, it's, and I think, right, it's like the way I look at it is honestly, who cares how people are making money right now? As long as people can start also learning the value in supporting protocols that actually further this industry, because it's more of that is being built right now, and I think people are paying attention, but we're not going to see that unless some of this access is plugging in. But I'm so grateful that we didn't have like a sort of hugely blown out speculator first auction. Like, I think the auction really reflected how this collector valued this like burgeoning ecosystem and valued Toki as a fan, right? And that sets a really beautiful precedent for every artist that's in this ecosystem. They're not looking at a multi-million-dollar sale, they're looking at a multi-thousand-dollar sale, but that's something that they can achieve. That's something that fans will put down, and your average fan, not just someone who's rich in crypto. So it's, yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but I think we do best, right, as people that are, making it in this industry, by actually turning some of that capital into the things that are driving real value and not speculative value.
Yeah, and I think that I would just pull out that $1,000 is a really meaningful amount of money for 99% of artists in the world. And I think in crypto we're so used to tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars from a new wave, a new token, new NFT, whatever it might be, that the practicality of being able to give an artist even $100 a month goes such a long way that I think focusing more on that is the bigger fight to fight. But I think it also is that direct conflict with the expectation that people have who have been in crypto, where if there's an app that's making them $100 a week, they don't even blink at it because they're just trying to find that 1,000x. They're trying to find, I'm going to put $10 into something that's going to turn into $1 million. And so as a founder, you almost have to decide, like, who am I building for? Am I building for, crypto people who have been around my concentric circles for the last 3 years? Are we building for a completely net new audience who has never been in the circle at all? Or is it somewhere in the middle? And I think that somewhere in the middle, answer is, I think, what a lot of us are trying to figure out right now. And I think what you have found a really unique way to try and bring to the table.
Totally. It's like people that are coming from the crypto side, they understand the mechanisms. They understand the vision a little faster than others will or others might. But we're not building for them because they get it inherently. We're building for those that need to learn. We're building for people that, Sona might be their first interaction with anything Web3, anything decentralized, anything of this kind. And I think if we can solve for them, which I think our first auction showed it has potential to, then that's really the winner, right? Because that's where an artist fans are. And ultimately this is about activating a fan's strongest community, not giving them a fake one or giving them a false sense of connectedness to collectors that don't even know who they are. Like, that's something that I find so sad about so much of what has been built or what is built, is that because it's so focused on speculation and 1000xing, that you lose that genuine relationship between an artist and their supporter. They're nameless.
I mean, I would even take it a step further to say that there is no speculation happening on on-chain music today because there's just not a secondary market for it. It's just the reality of the situation. And so now what's happening is that I feel like a lot of artists that were once very invested in building relationships with their collectors have lost the desire to maintain those relationships, because I think that there was just a disconnect between the reason why people were collecting, the reason they were supporting those artists. And I feel like a lot of artists that were putting their music on chain felt like those weren't actually fans of mine. The only reason they were doing it is because they wanted to make a return on the back of my music. And while I don't think that that's true, and I think you do see examples of, many of the people that are in the invested music community and whatnot that are, collecting out of pure patronage, the reality is a lot of those people were just coming in to try and buy something for 0.1 ETH and then sell it for 1 ETH, 2 ETH. And then when that went away, I think that a lot of artists saw the lack of consistent, returns, meaning that the only reason people wanted to buy their music was so that they could speculate on it. And so now I think that a lot of the work that I've been having to figure out is, like, how do artists think about their collectors relative to their fans? Are they completely different audiences? Are they one and the same? Are collectors actually an elevated version of a fan. And I think in the best case scenario, that is the answer. Like you were saying with Sona, like ideally the collector of a Sona is someone that's extremely passionate about it. And the way that they're showing that is by collecting this music. But traditionally what we've seen is that most collectors probably couldn't name like 5 songs from the artist that they're buying. They're just buying something for the sake of buying it. And I don't exactly know what the answer is that makes an artist feel excited and proud to get more collectors when they have this preconceived notion that the only reason people are buying their music is to try and make a return on it.
Exactly. I mean, I couldn't agree more. That's the fine line to cross or walk. And I think with Sona, again, it's in building for the true fan or in building for someone who wants to support an artist. The way that we built this protocol brings your collector type and your speculator type along the way, right? Because ultimately, if you find a really young artist at the beginning of their career and you buy their song for $1,000 and they blow up, you're going to feel that. You're going to feel that really, really intensely as that artist supporter, as that artist collector. And it's not going to be when you sell the song. It's going to be every 2 weeks, right? It's going to be, you will literally have this like joint journey with this artist. And I think that kind of incentive mechanism, like it is about helping this artist succeed, is about getting this artist heard. That is what makes you more rewards as a collector. That's what makes an artist more rewards as an artist. I think that aligns, right, the ugliness of collecting with something that can actually be leveraged for really, really good, especially considering how well connected so many of these people are. Like it could drastically help an artist's career.
Right.
So I think it was just trying to find something more sustainable there in terms of the incentive alignment.
Yeah,
it is a catch-22.
Because you have people that are like, I want to spend money on your music, which as a direct-to-fan relationship is a beautiful thing. Like there doesn't really exist the world to do that today. But it almost feels like when someone spends money on the music, it changes their relationship of it to more of like a financial relationship than just a pure patronage one, where I know that a lot of artists that I talk to is like, they just want fans that listen to their music for free. They don't have any expectation of anything. But the second that you put $1 into something, it's like, I could put that $1 into your music because I just love the music. But I think now the artist believes that the only reason that you put $1 into it is because you want to make money off of me, which is funny just as like a catch-22, because I actually don't think that's the case, especially today, of anyone that's actively collecting music or participating, is I don't think they have any expectation of it. But I think that artists are now looking at their collectors like a little bit more warily of being like, okay, like who are these people? What do you expect of me? Versus when you put your music on Spotify and someone like likes it or follows you on Instagram, you're just like, I love that you love my music. And I don't even have to think about the fact that you have an investment in me or like something on the line. And so trying to find that throughput, I think, is like really the biggest problem to solve, is like, how do fans pay artists directly without there being a expectation of profit or utility, where it can really just be about valuing the art in a way that's sustainable to both parties that are involved in it.
Totally. And I think for Sona, like what we'll have to work on is making sure that does become, it's a one-on-one Sona, it's a one-on-one relationship with an artist and the collector of that song, and strengthening that relationship as much as possible, us creating as many opportunities for artists to meet their backers and meet their supporters. I think it's super important that the streaming stays free, and we do find like lower price point areas for people to support the broader vision or the broader pool. But I would hate, right, to live in a world where artists feel like more of a commodity than they already are. Like we're forcing them to become that, and that's not fair, and that's not healthy. So I think we're definitely taking an opinionated stance on 99% of the people using Sona are not going to be they're not going to be buying Sonas, right? They're there to listen to music, rally around the artists that they believe in, potentially tipping a reward pool somewhere else that's going to the artists they believe in. Yep. But ultimately, right, the collector-artist relationship that we want to build is one that is community forward, one-of-one, and really unique to that song, that artist, that supporter.
I guess the last question I would have for you is, how do you think about reaching real music fans? Like, what's kind of your thought process around like how to reach the average person that's just listening to music on Spotify on a daily basis?
Yes. So I think a big part of that is the type of listener, right, that we want to have in Sona. Like we want people that are active music listeners. We want people that are going to basically have 6 different music apps open on their phone, right? Or on their laptop, because that's where they get that really sick on the piano piece. That's where they get that really sick remix. That's where they get that set. Like, that listener could potentially also be an excellent curator. And that's a really important piece for us that we didn't touch here today. But Sona does not have any platform generated curation. Like, we do not want to have any sort of sway on how people are listening to the music, because that is, right, how the rewards are distributed. We want people playlisting the music, curating the music, like having people with good taste tell you where to find sound, right? So our strategy, right, is to meet them in the discords, is to meet them on an artist's like social media following, is to meet them at live events, at concerts, right? Hit them where those listeners that are way more in tune with the artists they listen to and already have an active listening experience might be, right? Because those are folks that vision driven, mission driven, will go wherever the artist tells them to go. And then hopefully when they get there, right, they have an experience that inspires them to curate, that inspires them to feel like they have an impact on the playlist they're making, on the artist they're playlisting, right? That's the first time that I feel people will actually have such a sense of pride for like a following around their music taste, which is maybe Sona's the first music platform to really dig into that. But the whole point is to discover music socially and discover music through how people are listening and saving and playlisting, and have it be like in more parity with how we listen to music and discover music today. It's like, holy shit, what's that? Like, what's the track ID, And it's Sona tries to mirror that. So a very roundabout way of saying we want to find those true active listeners where they already live and show them a world where like their taste and their caring can have a massive impact on the music that they love.
Well said. And I feel like it's a really great time for this episode because obviously the platform's just starting to kick off. We just had the first auction last week. In closing thoughts here, what can people expect from you guys over the course of the next few months?
Totally. So, I mean, we've got auctions lined up almost every week through the new year. So definitely keep your eyes out. Every Friday, a new artist, up and coming, established, etc. The best thing you can do for them is to bid and support their work. Platform-wise, we'll be introducing some better discovery features. We have about 12 million songs hitting the platform in a couple weeks, I believe. So also stream it to the ground, go crazy. I think another thing that could really support us is if you see artists streamable that you're itching to support or collect, let us know and we'll reach out to them. Because I think our strategy for like which artists we reach out to bring onto the platform can and should be heavily influenced by the community that's using this platform and excited by whichever artists they see. So yeah, you can definitely see some really fun discovery, a lot more music, many more auctions, and potentially some very cool introduction of AI in the coming months as well. Less on the producing side and more on the discovery side, but are doing something fun there.
I love that. And for people that want to stay up with you and Sona following this episode, where's the best place to do so?
So you can follow me.
I think your audio cut out. I think your AirPod might have switched or something like that. It looks like it changed output.
Haha, is this working?
Back.
Bless.
I'm going to run that last question back again. So for people that want to stay up with you and Sona following this episode, where's the best place to do so?
So you can follow me on Twitter at LauraTJD, at LauraTJD. You can follow Sona at SonaStream, no space, no dot. And definitely set up an app at app.sona.stream for free.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It was amazing hearing about your journey, everything that you guys are working on. I know that people aren't going to see the technical difficulties in the background that are listening to this. Thank you for pushing through. That was really, really funny just how much we had to encounter there. But Laura, I'm really so happy for you. I'm really happy for you and Jen and everyone on the team that brought this to life. I know it was no easy feat. So really excited to see where you guys go from here. I'm excited to look back on this episode in a couple of years and just, reminisce on the beauty that is the start of a new chapter.
where it all started. Yeah, Cooper, thank you so much for having me on. Like, I feel like you've been around since the very beginning, and I think we both watched our journey. So, thank you, thank you, thank you. And anything we can do to support, let me know.
I love it. Well, cool, guys. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next week. And in the meantime, go smash those Sona auctions, and we'll see you guys again soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.